Hi, this is Arik,
And Aurelia,
and we're going to talk about life and interesting things.
or so we think, but in the end, you'll be the judge of it.
Either way, what we have to talk about is Ageless! Hi, Aurelia. It's really an honor to be with you here today.
Thank you, the honor's all mine.
Well, actually, I say that because the energy is just so heavy outside in the world.
That's sadly but true.
It's so intense, it's just really intense. And also because right before we did this Ageless podcast, I was looking at something on your shelf in your office, and I was wondering what it was, and then I saw it's travel adapters. And I had this thought, remember when we needed those?
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like we said last night, this is the longest period. At least I have been here. I mean,
Yeah.
you traveled at the beginning before
Yeah.
COVID.
I got lucky. I traveled as if there was no problem. I even got bumped into first class, which was amazing. It was the first time, and it was really a lot of fun. And then going was no problem. And then coming, I got back home before it was a couple days before the border closed, so it was really intense.
Mm-hmm.
Also first class, but I had my mask on and everything, so it was cool. But yeah, I mean, I just recently had my solar return and I wasn't traveling, which is also intense. And solar returns, they're always setting the quantum level for the next year ahead and showing what's going on for the year ahead. So because even when I'm seeing clients for their birthdays or solar returns, I'm seeing what are their goals and which time zone can they go into to optimize the year ahead. So that really wasn't an option. But in this case, I was able to kind of just readjust some of my goals and just see what to do and see what to transcend to hit the goals that I want to keep. And so that was a really cool experience, this inward travel.
Yeah.
This inner travel, so I just think that's really interesting. So anyhow, do you want to say anything to that?
No, just that I'm looking forward to my solar return that I will also spend here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of light on that day, that's for sure, man. Okay, so, my dear, love of my life, my question for you is, well, there's two questions, and you might have to answer one to answer the other, but what is an oath, and how is it connected to the path? And I feel first we should talk about what is the path.
Well, I mean, the path is the practice you have chosen on your way to liberation.
Okay, what is liberation?
That's when you are no longer triggered by sensual input. Then you're free.
Triggered?
Yeah.
What's it, what does triggered do?
Trigger sets you off.
Uh-huh. And then I start acting out and doing things that I can't control. Could be internal also.
Either way, you gotta be liberated from it.
Okay, yeah. So liberation from these triggers.
It's all first internal before you act it out, because first cause is always mental, so everything starts inside of
I was
us.
just kind of actually thinking more medical. How then things might go haywire, God forbid, this is a trigger or something,
Yeah, that too.
But yeah, okay, so being liberated from these reactivity, liberation from reactivity.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then the path is the path you've chosen to be liberated from reactivity.
The practice
The
that
practice.
you have chosen.
The practice, okay.
Because, like, no one path is better than the other. If you're, like, serious about it and you keep doing your practice, then, like they say, all roads lead to Rome.
But you need a path to do it.
Yes.
You cannot just wander aimlessly and just become non-reactive.
No.
Or liberated, I'm sorry, liberated.
No, you cannot do that. I like that image of the hermit card of the tarot, and that makes it very clear, like, it's like how we're climbing mountains. And I always say, if you are down in the meadow, then you can walk here and there and not a lot happens, but you also don't have the amazing view from the meadow. I mean, you may see beautiful things, but, like, your perspective is very limited. And then the higher you go on the mountain, the more difficult it becomes. And where, at the meadow, you could, like, walk for miles in each direction. As you become getting higher up, one false step can be the difference between life and death.
Wow. Like life and death meaning like actual life and death?
Yeah, like you said, if a trigger manifests in a way where it would, bear some negative physical fruit, then yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, thank you for explaining that. I've often wondered about like all these different paths, and I've actually done a lot of research on the different paths, and I don't want to get into all that, but one thing that I've learned, that I've known, is that it's really important that you, whatever path you choose, that you believe in it, and that you know that it's the path for you.
Yes.
I know that that's really true. It doesn't matter what path it is. It's just you need to really know that it's working for you, because, for example, not everyone can climb all those mountains. Maybe some people want to just like walk along the beach or walk in the woods, or each one can be the path to liberation, like metaphorically, of course, not. And also what I found really interesting is like I always had this huge question, like, how can there be so many different descriptions of heaven or hell? From all these different paths, spiritual paths, or even religions, because a religion can be a path, or even science can be a path, like just these different paths. Because, I'm not saying that you will always stay there, but you will move, right? Like you can move from one path, or your path can evolve. Well, I guess the question that's coming up is like, I guess there is the path, and then my path. Is there a difference? Because this question just spontaneously arose as I was talking.
Ideally not. I mean, ideally your path is the path.
Because I hear like a lot of New Agers say like, just wasn't right on my path. And like sometimes I just want to like almost throw up, because I'm just like, wow, this could be like ego path.
Of course it could, but we're talking about like practice.
Yeah.
We have said like practice is defining the path, and yes, of course
That's a really good point.
You may need to look here and there until you find out what is your path, like what is right for you.
But what's more powerful, like I guess what I'm also just realizing is that someone can have their path, but then at some point it intersects with the path. Because technically you could say wandering around is part of my path, but it's not part of a practice path.
Well, then it's not a path, because that's what I said in the beginning when you asked me, what is a path? And I said, well, It is the practice that leads you to
Mm-hmm.
liberation, and I cannot be the judge of that. If somebody is learning to be non-reactive by walking around here and there and everywhere, then that is their path. Because how I used to say in my karma workshop, what is important, what really shows you that you're free is once you stop judging. Because then you're not reacting, then you take things and see them for what they are, and you stop arguing with reality, which every judgment is like an argument that you try to fight out with reality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not judging and you get to those realizations by poking your nose or by sitting in a cave for 500 years, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's clear, but I also just think it's important that people know that they could think that they're on the path, but they're really just on their path, and it's not the same thing as a practice. Of course, in the bigger picture, it is we're all on our path, even if we're overdosing on heroin. That's part of my path, but that's not part of a practice.
As stated when we started, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a practice, and this practice has to be adhered to.
So what's a practice then?
Like I say, I don't know. I mean, look at any of the, I do not want to call it religions, but, most of the practices are connected to the big world religions. Like every practice is somehow connected to a meditative state or a meditative practice, whether it be a walking meditation or a sitting meditation, or that doesn't really matter. I mean, I do not know. I do not know all the.
Just a few examples. Yeah, thank you. Like that's good. Like just not all of them.
Or like you have chanting.
Yeah, there's all kinds of practices.
Yeah,
so anything
and chanting gets you in a meditative state. So that's really.
But the goal is to stop judging.
Yes.
So whatever gets you there, that's the path.
Yes.
That's what it is. Because if you're just learning to judge more or how to judge better, like say you activate your psychic energies, but only just to judge, then you're really not on the path. You're on some kind of path, but not you're not doing a spiritual practice. You're not
on the path to liberation.
You're on the path to liberation. You're on the path to enslavement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like what I also wanted to say is like when I had this question, like how can there be all these different explanations of heaven and hell and all these different paths, like which one's real, like which one's the most accurate? But then I realized that actually each path has its own heaven and hell. Mm-hmm. I always thought like we all go to the same place, but that's not necessarily true, because like say if you're a devout Catholic your whole life, you will go to heaven or hell that is reserved for Catholics. Mm-hmm. It's very different than the quote-unquote heaven or hell of a Buddhist or a Taoist, like everybody has their own heaven or hell, like it's their own real state for that belief system, for that practice.
So now I don't know, are you talking about like in the Catholic sense, like going to heaven after you die or going to hell after you die? Because
yeah. I mean literally
that I really
like
don't know
concept,
because that concept, really in reality does not apply.
Yeah, but I think like
heaven and hell is here right now.
Of course.
Because these are state of mind.
Of course. And that on the bigger scale, yes, but for religious, followers, like they think it's like afterlife. Like do I go up or down?
Well, however, I mean, you can ask any Catholic and you will see that they are not all happy.
Yeah, of course.
So, of course, maybe if they're real Catholics, which I think should rather be a rarity these days, like, actual practicing Catholic, they will know that what they're experiencing here is purgatory.
Yes. Like the in-between state.
Yeah, and once they stop judging, they cleanse themselves, and then they're like
all about
in
judgment.
heaven.
It's all about judgment, and that's also why I say every day is Judgment Day.
Yes.
Every moment
Yes.
is Judgment Day. So, after this break, let's talk about what is an oath in relation to this path, as now we have defined it. This episode of Ageless is brought to you by our program Speechless, where we get into the real details behind the veils of reality beyond the news and the fake news. Consider subscribing to Speechless. Just Google it by Arik and Aurelia Xander, Speechless. You can find us on Patreon. Alright, we are back and we're talking about the path, and specifically now I want to know then, what is an oath and what does it have to do with this path?
Yeah, I don't really know so much what is an oath, not even as a word. Can we call it a vow?
I think there's a difference. I really think there's a difference because, I mean, of course, they are similar, but an oath, I'm just looking it up now, like the definition, is a solemn promise, often invoking a divine witness regarding one's future action or behavior. Okay, that's just like the textbook dictionary, and they're also, the pictures that are accommodating it is the hand on the Bible.
Yeah, that's the only connection I would know.
The mailman takes an oath. Doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, which actually used to be a very spiritual thing. I know I've taken it. You know, it's a very spiritual, like the Hippocratic Oath, like the physicians were used to be the protectors of the, you know, the physos, the basically the chi. They had to really make sure that the chi was there. So, you know, or the President of the United States or anybody that gets sworn into office, they have to take an oath. They put their hand on the Bible, which I think is amazing. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, because that's has a lot of the energy of the tarot in it. So that to me is like an oath, like in modern day terms, and then even, you know, in a vow, like you're bringing up, to me is like just being kind of mainstream about it. Like it's really about marriage, you know, like this vow that you make. I will look it up now. Like it says a solemn promise, solemnly. I mean, I'm sure you can define vow. So now that we know a little bit more about oath, like if you want to talk about the difference, that's fine.
Like I said, I could not talk about really the difference, because what you said about the oath, that is what I thought is a vow. You know, that with the divine witness, you know, I vow, because maybe I cannot say I oath.
Okay, here's something I just pulled up. It says vows and oath. Okay, so with the vow to accomplish something, a person dedicates himself to the task wholly. Whoever takes an oath to accomplish something is required to answer for it, for he has named himself or someone of his belongings as a pledge of his commitment, and is thus bound by his very life, his honor, and his property. So I want to say something actually not to that, because to me the way I understand this is that because you brought up vow, spiritually speaking, when you take a vow, you get the energy to fulfill that vow.
Yes, and 100% like holy, like 100% I vow to in thoughts, words, and action will work towards this goal no matter what it takes.
Yeah.
You know, dead or alive.
Sounds very spiritual.
Yeah.
But an oath, the way I just understood this now, is kind of like I take responsibility to see that happen. And I'm even putting down some collateral in case it doesn't. Like, I'm responsible for it. Whereas a vow, it's not an outspoken responsibility. you know, like, that's how it sounds to me here, like, where with an oath, I'm responsible. Everybody, like, okay, so now I'm put into this position, I'm responsible to do this. But where a vow is like, I draw down the energy to do it. I think maybe there's a little bit of a difference there. You know, it goes on to say, vows and oaths therefore affect a person's whole being. They put one's very existence in pawn. There is a distinct difference, however, between an oath and a vow. A vow is merely a personal promise, whereas an oath is a promise made before some institutional authority. In taking an oath, a person not only assumes an obligation but also becomes liable to prosecution. The state and society have an interest in his act. Oaths serves as an objective guarantees of what is promised. Swearing to tell the truth, one guarantees that what one says is true. Oaths are self-endorsing. Like, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. The practice of oath-taking by which a person places his very life at risk is an extremely ancient one. So again, with this matters of life and death, so to speak, you know, like what you were talking about. It is an institution of coercion, the most powerful coercion known to primitive man. Oaths are encountered among all peoples and in all cultures. They are a primal symbol of religion. Because they are absolutely binding by nature and because they are subject to both misuse and overuse, oaths are nevertheless looked upon with some suspicion in the fields of ethics, politics, and so on and so on.
Thank you for enlightening me and us maybe on that subject. Like, for me, it's still, I mean, I find it very interesting, the juxtaposition between the two, because the way I heard it here, that a vow, you know, it's like this personal thing, and it sounded like a little bit diminishing of the vow, whereas, you know, in my reality, like, the vow is very powerful because it has to have this very, very personal commitment. And it's not like you said, the oath, you know, like the truth and nothing but the truth and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, I perjure myself because do I believe so help me God? No, I don't. So, or, you know, the oath of, like, the Hippocratic oath, like you said it, are doctors nowadays really still the guardians of chi, or are they in the employ of the pharmaceutical companies?
Oh, they amended the oath. They completely changed the wording of it from the chi. They got rid of it.
Yeah, but my point is that, you know, to have this oath as you invoke some outside authority, I think is not enough for the path of liberation. It has to be a vow. It has to be this quality of, like, yourself, you know, like you do this for yourself. There is no glory in taking a vow. Nobody will know. It's not you stand there and raise your hands and then, like,
self-endorsement.
Like, none of that. None of that. This is between yourself and yourself.
Well,
me, myself, and
yeah,
I.
I mean, that answers the question. I mean, we can talk more about that now that we say no. It's like it's a vow on the path. So, so then it's interesting though. Before we get deeper into that, it's because with an oath, which let's just define it as more public, and a vow is more private. Because, like, I draw on that energy from the divine to fulfill the vow, and with the oath, it's like, okay, you guys, I promise publicly to do that, to do my best. Okay, like, I do the oath to do that, but you could still, you're not really drawing upon any energy. You're just saying, like, maybe I took this vow and now I'm telling you that I took this vow by making an oath. Like the vow seems to be more powerful. Either way,
I don't know, like the way it seems to me is that the vow is something that's internal.
Yeah, private.
And the oath is something that is
external.
Like external.
Yes.
And thereby, you know, because I have like this external responsibility.
Right.
Like I mean, you know, it becomes like a matter of morality.
Yeah, like the
rather
postman's
than-
under oath. He has
Yeah.
to, through rain, through sleet, through snow. I can't remember the exact... But that's third house energy, astrologically. So, like, they're under oath, they have to do it. They can't take a day off. I mean, other than Sunday. I mean, and even then, I think they're working on Sunday now in some states. I don't know. I don't know. But it's a very spiritual energy. Like, there is spiritual energy to that, because if you made a vow to your oath, you can do that.
Yes.
Right? You can make a vow to your oath.
Yes,
But
I vow to keep up my oath.
Yeah.
Now that's ideal.
Yeah, so this is amazing because, like, when you're talking about, like, the path and you need that vow and you commit to do that, like, whatever it is. But vows don't have to only be towards the way I understand you, or maybe I misunderstood you. They don't have to only be about spirituality. Like, if I vow to myself to learn something, that's good. But what I just wanted to throw in there into the mix about spirituality, because that's the context of this conversation, is like, actually when someone makes a vow to become spiritual, like, and to go onto that path, you actually cast a new chart for that person.
That makes total sense.
And when I'm seeing an astrological chart, because, you know, I practice astrology, and when I'm working with people, and then, you know, I know, or it's like there's spiritual practice there, it's something you work with in the background.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you work with in the background, and I think it's interesting to indicate like another dimension to being human and being on the path.
I think this is amazing. This is really amazing and makes a lot of sense, because being on the path, like we said, you know,
Like
with the practice,
having a vow creates new life.
it will, yes,
New energy.
that's what I want to say, you know, it will totally change you. And if it doesn't totally change you, then the path is not for you, because then the practice that you are doing is not working. Because we have to change in order to be liberated.
I did that.
Because, you know, if we could be liberated the way we are today, then what the heck? Then we are liberated, right? But that's not working. Like, we have to change in order to be liberated. And so, once again, if that's what your practice is doing for you, good for you. If not, you have to find something else.
Like if your practice is changing you,
then you're on the right. Right path. If it's not changing you, then find something else.
As always, in Ageless we come full circle, because a circle is eternal and a line is not.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's, you know, like when I was talking about, like, well, what about my path versus the path, and how do I know I'm not full of it? Like, I've been on a path that I have had the pleasure of not questioning it before. I mean, of course, I've had my moments, but like, not like, oh, I don't think I'm like, you know, I want to like, I don't think I'm on the right path or whatever. Like the spiritual path, like the different modalities and whatnot. But I think it's really interesting what you say, because I've changed so much on these paths that I've changed, it would look like on the outer level that I've changed my path. But I haven't.
Yeah.
So that makes like total sense, like going from, you know, being born Catholic and then going into like remembering my astrological wisdom and whatnot, or working with tarot. And I mean, you would think that there's a complete like change of path, but no, it's all just one path. Like, and I think that's just going full circle with like all these different paths, but it's been one path.
100%.
But each one I've gone into so deeply that it's changed me, and then the next thing, like the next layer that's more, I guess, speaking to me, like not only speaking to me, but like accurate, I want to say, is
opening up.
Opening up.
And this brings us back to the imagery of the hermit, because
From the tarot.
you can see it that, he stands on the mountaintop, and then you see that there are many, many more mountaintops in the background, and so this is what he has to do. He has to, go back down and then find the next path up to the next mountaintop.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
He must
just
have
how
some
it
amazing
works.
calves. That's really cool. I mean, I just also want to mention that if you haven't seen the Hermit Tarot card, I will soon have the 22 archetypes available for print that are going to accompany the class that I'm going to be offering online. So if you want to get some information about that, please send me a message or comment. It's going to be a really cool online series of different archetypal energies and working with our super awesome Cosmic Pixels tarot deck. So
Yeah.
you can really see the tarot in there and the hermit and everything. So that's really cool. If you haven't seen it, you don't have to Google it. You can just check ours out, So anyhow, very cool. So yeah, the vow. So then this is my question has changed from the beginning to now. It's like, what does the vow have to do with the spiritual path? And
yeah. And like if I talk about myself, like I took a vow when I was like maybe 3 years old, because I would tell everybody, that I'm a really happy person and that I will not give up until everybody is as happy as I am. And for anybody who knows just a little bit about the path, this is considered a bodhisattva vow.
Sounds like its own episode.
Definitely.
That's amazing. And
but just saying that my whole life then was, drawn by that vow. And I was only 3 years old, and you may wonder, how could you do that? Well, because vows are eternal.
So we'll let you guys think about that, and I will probably bring up what happens when you break a vow in Speechless.
Ooh.
Okay, guys, this has been Arik
and Aurelia,
and we hope that we gave you something really beautiful and pleasant to contemplate here with this last thing Aurelia said. So either way, you have just listened to an episode of
Ageless.
Please listen to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, everywhere where podcasts are available. We appreciate you guys for listening and all the amazing feedback that we've been getting. And please consider subscribing to Speechless, where we can take it to the next level. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.